Civil society organizations have issued a damning review of the Edo State governorship election, which held on Saturday. Now, the CSOs, which monitored the exercise, have declared that the results from several polling units were altered at coalition centers. According to the Civil Society Coalition, the Situation Room, the conduct of the election lacked credibility. Also, Yaga Africa, which said it deployed the process and results verification for transparency methodology for the Edo election involving 300 stationary and 25 roving observers, covering a representative sample of polling units across all 18 local government areas of the state, faulted the conduct of the poll and the declared results as lacking integrity. Now, to put the situation in a proper perspective, we are now being joined by the program manager for elections at Yaga Africa, Paul James. He will also discuss the organization's observations about the Edo State governorship election and how to improve the integrity of elections in Nigeria. Welcome to Newsday, Mr. James. My first question is, just elaborate on the key findings from Yaga Africa's observations during the Edo State governorship election and how they reflect the overall process.
Thank you very much for having me. So for us at Yaga, we had identified 3 critical tests that will shape the outcome of the Edo election. Number 1, we said the integrity test, that is the ability of the election management body to give the people of Edo the kind of election that they deserve. We also have the resilience test, that is for the citizen to be able to surmount all odds and participate actively in the election. And as well, the impartiality test, that is the security agencies to also be able to provide level playing field for everyone that is involved in the election. So if you have seen our previous release before the last one that was issued yesterday, we had raised concerns about places we thought were hotspots in the election, about 8 hotspots, and we had also engaged the Electoral Commission to know the extent of their preparatory activities. What we saw on the morning of the election were the perennial challenges of logistics management in the process, where you got a transport company literally acting like what you could refer to kabu-kabu, doing drop-off for INEC officials, or in some locations don't even know where the polling units are located. But again, kudos to INEC. We thought they picked up, and when the process started, they even magnanimously extended the time for voting. And then to a large extent, we thought the people of Edo were able to participate in the process. The concerns we had about the election, while largely the election day process went well. For instance, if you look at other variables, like even the bimodal voter accreditation system that was deployed, it was deployed in over 99% where we have our stationary observers. And from those locations, we got report that they worked well throughout the day. There was one location that reported the bypass of the beavers, meaning the INEC officials simply refused to use the beavers and were doing manual accreditation. Or another location also where we had received reports about INEC officials that will accredit people using the beavers, but at the point of voting, they will tell the voters that they had run short of election material. So there are a bit of infraction here and there during the voting process. But, to a large extent, we thought it went well. It was during the collation process that we had raised our concerns. We specifically spotted LGAs such as EGO, and West, Oredo, Oha, where we thought the results were manipulated, meaning they fall outside of our margins. So to understand the context, like you had mentioned, we deployed the process results verification for transparency, or otherwise, if you like, a sample-based methodology for observing the election. This is something that we do in our everyday life, that because of limited resources, people will tell you that we took a sample of, and we go to that, which is representative and reflective of whatever had happened in those locations. So what we do in our own case is that we had 300 samples from each of the 18 local governments using inferential statistics, and every of the polling unit had the equal chance of represented on the sample. And then at the end of the day, based on what we had, we were able to extrapolate. If you have seen our report, we didn't mention numbers. We were issuing our statistics ranges within which we thought the results should fall. And so, based on what INEC had announced, we thought some of those results fall off our own range. And so we had reasons to question the outcome. And you may want to ask why Edo. This is not the first time that YAGA is deploying the methodology. We have deployed it in over 19 elections. So this is the 19th time YAGA has deployed the methodology. It is a proven methodology that has been deployed in over 52 countries, over 200 times across the world. So we have believe in the fidelity of the methodology to detect if there is manipulation. We have detected manipulation in the presidential election where we exposed that results were altered in Imo State specifically and in Rivers State where results just flipped for parties. So we saw similar trend in the last Edo election, but what we saw specifically happened during collation process. There were attempts to subvert the process. For instance, in Esako West, there were sporadic gunshots at the polling unit. People fought for safety. And at the end of the day, when I reached out to our supervisor for Esako West, he had mentioned that there were results from 2 wards that were not collated at the ward level. But we saw those also on the IRF. And then if you think about places like Oredo, they simply moved the collation from Oredo Local Government Collation Center to INEC office, citing security concerns. Our supervisors were there. We reached out at that point. They told us they couldn't fathom what exactly was the reason. In Ipoba also, it was the same thing. What they did was to smoke everybody with tear gas. They tear gas observers, they tear gas INEC officials, and move the collation from the local government. So what we have seen from the polling unit in their purest form, we thought they were altered because to a large extent also what we did when we had concerns with Ego and Oredo was to go back to the IRF, the results that were submitted online, and we tried to match up the results that were posted online against what our observers have sent to the database, and then they matched. But it was the final figure that INEC announced for the local government that we thought were altered.
Thank you so much, Paul, for that elaborate analysis that you just gave us. It's of course very disturbing, especially at the collation centers, what you observed about the potential for the results being altered. We did have a research analyst yesterday at the Center for Democracy. He's a research analyst, Center for Democracy and Development. That's Deni Gefa Angalapu. And one of the things that he did, yes, thank you.
Angalapu.
Thank you. You're of course familiar with him. One of the things that he mentioned is that in spite of the introduction of technology to our voting system, it looks as though nothing has changed for the better. Based on all these observations that you've also made from YAGA, what would you say is the way forward when it comes to future elections in terms of the method that should be applied?
Well, I think what has not improved in our process, sadly, is the human element, especially the kind of pressure that we saw in the Edo election. Like for me, I would say I think we need to move to the era where we'll have all elections conducted in one day. Maybe it will reduce the pressure. If you see the number of politically exposed persons that were in Edo last weekend, almost every state governor was in Edo, including the Senate president. Now, if you think about the limited resources that were in the state, even for the security concerns in the state that have to provide support to this politically exposed person, it was huge on the commission. There was pressure on INEC to manipulate the election. Perhaps in some places they yielded to those pressure. This is not what you want to be seeing in our election. And then, of course, this is also an election that there was so much reliance on the technology. Like I said, as much as it has worked significantly, there was a point where the IRF was not accessible. From like 3 a.m. On the night of the election, the beavers were not accessible. Whether it has opened up at the moment, I don't know. It was difficult to download any of the polling unit results from the beavers. And so this all raised a lot of integrity issues, raised a lot of concerns, especially on the part of the voters. But moving away also from technology is about citizens' participation, which was thought was abysmally also poor. As much as we know, people that showed up defied all the rains and all the initial challenges of the election and were able to participate, only 22% of registered voters participated in the election. This is also the election that had over 85% of PVCs collected, that also have a shift in the number of registered voters from the 2.2 million in 2020 to like 2.6 million, over 19% increase in number of registered voters. But then you see the sharp decline from the 24% that participated in 2020 to 22% in this election. I think we can do better. And I think especially from the political class, I hope this is not going to be a template or a playbook for election manipulation in the future. The election management body must be allowed to do what they are constitutionally mandated to do. And as well, citizen participation must be a meaningful participation. We cannot plan for an election for 3 months and then politicians will come in the weekend of election and rubbish everything. Think about even the vote buying that happened in the full glare, public glare. Everybody saw that monies exchanging had between 10 to 15,000 naira. We cannot we cannot subjugate our future to election manipulation or election rigging or just buying a highest bidder war. I don't think that should be the practice of electoral democracy.
Paul, you did make a reference to some previous electoral inconsistencies in other states in the past, and you did highlight some inconsistencies in this case. What immediate actions do you recommend should be taken to prevent future issues with elections?
I think we should avoid this idea of moving too quickly from an election. Now, we thought in this election, since concerns were raised, that INEC should have explored the provision of Section 65 of the Electoral Act that allowed the Commission to review, a 1-week window for the Commission to review elections that were declared, especially suspicious results that were declared under duress. In Kogi, we raised those concerns. If you recall, November 11, 2023 election in Kogi, where there were concerns about pre-filled election results. We raised the concerns with the Commission. The Commission promised it was going to investigate. Whether prosecution have been done, we don't know. Whether arrests have been made in that election, we don't know. You don't inspire confidence in that manner. We also saw where there were concerns in Olu local government in Imo the last time. Because of security concerns, of course, whether election held in the local government, whether they moved polling unit to local government, there was no proper accountability for that. We shouldn't continue election in that phase. What I see happen is wherever it's projected to be difficult, you see that things just move quickly, announcements are made, and then we move on and start planning for the next election. This should not be the template. We need to have a moment of review, a moment of reflection to see what exactly happened in the election and how do we remedify them before we move on to the next phase of the election. I highlighted some things earlier, for instance, logistics challenge. It has always been a perennial concern. And like I said, there was a meeting that I held in Edo. I was in that meeting, a closed meeting with the INEC chair, where we raised those issues about whether or not there was adequate engagement, with the security, with the road transport union. And he assured us that to the extent that he knows, we were going to see improvement in the election. But to come in the morning of the election, and people are complaining, oh, we don't know the location. I thought they would have done their mapping before the election to even know where all these polling units would be located. Or even the arrangement of picking this group, dropping them, and coming back to pick another. I think we should move on from that era and begin to think about more creative way of engaging the process earlier, even before the election day. This is about a crisis of confidence we're talking about here. Because if you ask the vast majority of people that didn't participate in the election, what exactly will be the problem, they will point to you to the challenge of the election management body and also the overzealousness, the do or die attitude that we saw from the political class. That should not be the narrative in our election. I think we need to change from that.
Absolutely, Paul. In your words, this is indeed a crisis of confidence. But I'd like to talk to you about some allegations that were made by stakeholders regarding some security forces saying that they were partisan in their conduct. Does Yaga have any evidence to support or refute these claims based on what you observed?
Yes, so for us at Yaga, based off our data, we observed there was deployment of security in 97% of polling units. And also, in 12% of those polling units where we observe, the security agencies appear to be partisan. meaning they were unprofessional. In the sense, we had also reported vote buying in this location. They didn't happen in isolated location. They happened in the full glare. In some instances, you even hear that the security agencies aided and abetted that. I thought by now we should begin to make, some examples with some of these erring security personnel. These questions were asked during the stakeholder meeting that had also happened. All you keep getting from the security forces is the assurances that their people have been trained, they were going to be professional and all of that. I am not sure in the history of our election that we have done any serious arrests, especially of security personnel that were involved in election malpractice. I'm sure some people will say, he who alleges must prove. But if a security person is present in a location where vote buying is reported, what was their action? How did they react or respond to that? That should even be the first question to ask. Or if there are allegations that we can confirm or verify that security agency even stood by voting cubicle to aid or assist people on how to vote, which is not their responsibility. That is also something that we need to flag. For us at Yaga, we had a location where an army personnel in the morning of the election chased our observer. It took the intervention of the INEC personnel at the INEC ad hoc staff at the polling unit to allow the observer to observe. And that didn't even happen until the army personnel had finished whatever he wanted to do at the location before they allow observer to go back to observe the election. That should not happen. They have no business to be around our polling, if not because there is an ulterior motive. So like I said, we have the reports, we have locations where these infractions happen. If the security agencies are willing to make example of any of those their erring personnel, we will be glad to share those reports with them.
And I do have one question about how do you view the PDP's intention to challenge these results in court? What role do you think this is really going to play in terms of public confidence of the electoral process?
Well, I think, like with every election, this is what you want to see, the political maturity that people will think about a legal means to address their concerns about the process. That we are enjoying the peace in Edo, I think we should need to even commend the political parties for the show of political maturity, but also even the people of Edo State for maintaining the peace. But that not also moving away from the fact, if they feel, the results were not reflective of whatever they had at the polling unit, they have every legal right to challenge the outcome. Of course, they also have their agent in every location. Our data points that they were the APC agent in 98% of polling units, the PDP agent in about 99% of polling units. So they were almost in every location. They saw firsthand what had happened at the polling unit level. If you look from the election, most of the concerns were not about what had happened at the polling unit level, but at the coalition level. I think they have, for me, every reason to question the outcome, and they should pursue whatever the law, within the remit of what the law have allowed them. I think they should do that.
Program Manager Elections, Yaga Africa, Paul James, this has been an insightful discussion. We'd like to thank you for joining us here on Newsday. Thank you so much.